Hey guys, hey, it's Matthew. Um, we are working in digital media, Adobe Illustrator. Uh, I wanted to do this tutorial and walkthrough regarding the insect illustration project. This is a fun project. You just continue to learn the software really, and it's also very time consuming. And so you spend a lot of time, just experimenting and playing around with a few of the different Adobe Illustrator tools. The results are really satisfying. I always get a sense that when students are finished with this project, they just feel really great. They're really proud of their work, and so this tutorial kind of adds on to a previous one that I had completed, but I'm hoping that this one will be a little bit more thorough. Okay, so I'm going to manage things like research, finding the right image, setting up your document, setting up a project folder. And then essentially getting started. Okay. So somehow I kind of had this desire to do an illustration of a rhinoceros beetle. And so the first thing I'm going to do with Google Chrome is do a simple search. Okay. And when I get there, I'm not going to see as many images as I want to see. So I need to click on images. There we go. And because, the artboard that we are going to be creating is actually 11 by 17, you need to find a pretty good sized beetle, okay? And I don't mean like the actual physical size of the beetle, I mean the pixel dimensions of the image. So we're going to come over here to Tools. And by the way, I'm using Google Chrome, okay? It just happens to have this search parameter. Tools, size, and then you can click on large, okay? And then that's going to give you images that are for the most part usable for this project. And so let's see here. I don't know. I'm also looking for an image with a nice simple backdrop. I like this one because it shows the details of the legs. This one's pretty good too. So I think this is a good candidate. And by the way, if you hover over the beetle, you can see that I mean, this one is 3072 pixels by 1574. So that is definitely a good candidate. And it's a really nice, um, clean image with a simple background. So there's not a lot of complicated stuff happening that you would have to deal with. And you can focus on the insect itself. It also has these really nice, beautiful sort of drop shadows, which I think are really just a fantastic added bonus to this project because it grounds the image instead of it just kind of floating in space. And so I'm actually tempted to use either this one, but I like this one too, I think because of the orange color. And then it's kind of has, if you look at the detail here, if we were to blow it up, it has these real nice kind of like subtle hairs that can maybe be explored and worked with. So it's kind of a toss up between those two, but I am sort of tempted to use that one. Okay. So here's the article, and let's see what happens. Let's hope that I can save image as. And apparently that's a Japanese rhino beetle. And I'm going to go to my location where I can reliably save all of my design files without worry of losing them or them being lost, whatever. So go to my folder is called teaching, and then I have an archive folder. Then I can go into courses. I can go into digital media, and it's project 2 as far as the insect illustration project. And here under assets, I wonder, I'm going to actually create a new sort of just tutorial folder, which is essentially a project folder, but I want it to be called tutorial dash beetle, and I'm going to say Japanese. Okay. You need you need a project folder to save your file not only the insect illustration, or excuse me, the insect photograph that you're going to be working with, but the Adobe Illustrator file itself. So just trust me, every project that you really start in any art or design class, you need a project folder so that you can store things and save them appropriately. So hit create. And within that folder, I'm going to create another folder called assets. That's just a habit that I have. So just things that are related to any kind of project, creative project that I might be doing can go into this folder so that I can find them later. You know, you guys are well aware of what happens when you just start saving things to your desktop and your downloads folder and your documents folder and, you know, on a USB drive, and you end up having documents all over the place, which makes a project become very, very confusing. So, you know, this is initial, in my mind, kind of standard training. Excuse me, I'm drinking coffee while I'm doing this. It's standard training for design practice, and that's being organized, project management. Okay. So, and I'm going to rename this file Beetle. Keep it simple. Save. Now let's go ahead and double check that things are where they're supposed to be. And notice how, I mean, I know my file management system, so I know exactly where to go so that I can find this stuff. So backing up, whoops, assets, tutorial, another assets folder. And that is actually an AVIF. I'm not sure if we can open that in Illustrator. Let's see. It looks like we can. That's good. Okay. So, but before we go there, so we know that it's a file that we can work with. We actually need to go back and right click. By the way, if you don't have right click engaged on your Mac, it's really, really handy, or your PC, whatever. But you can come over here to, where is it, mouse, and you can engage the secondary click, okay? And essentially you can say, I want to use the right side of the mouse for that secondary click. So that's what I'm talking about there, okay? So right click, open with, but we actually want to see if we can open that with Photoshop. Let's see here. We're just going to open. We're not going to make any adjustments. Now, this is the thing. The aspect ratio of this image is quite a little bit odd, if you ask me. So we might end up having to crop some of this beetle, unfortunately. So if we hit C for crop in Photoshop, this dialog box will appear. And we need this insect to fit into an 11 by 17 artboard. And so if it's going the wrong way, you can click these two arrows right in the middle here and just invert it. So yeah, it looks like we are going to have to crop this beetle just a hair, unfortunately. And so, let's undo that, hit C again. And then I'm going to use my cursor while holding Shift so that I can kind of frame things the way that I want to. So I can get 2 feet in there. That's nice. I think that's the best I'm going to be able to do for this particular image. And that's okay. I'm losing part of that longer leg. So I'm having to make a sacrifice. But it needs to be 11 by 17 for my artboard. Okay. So now that I've decided on the aspect ratio and the composition, I'm going to hit enter. Okay, good. Now I need to save as. Save as, and it could be a JPEG or a PSD or whatever, but I'm actually going to save it as a PSD. I think that's my preference. Good. Close that out. Quit Illustrator since you no longer need it. So now we've got this new Photoshop file here. We also don't need this other stuff anymore. Sometimes I do have a tendency to kind of just keep things no matter what, but in today's circumstance, I'm in the mood to delete things I know I will never open up again. So now the Beetle PSD is cropped and ready for the Illustrator process. So now I'm going to come over here and open up Illustrator, which is already here, kind of waiting for us. And by the way, I don't think we really need this open anymore. So I'm just going to minimize Chrome so that we can see Illustrator a little bit more clearly. And I'm going to just kind of make it larger. Okay. So let's see, going back to our Finder window and our project folder, and remember, just to kind of back up, we still have a project folder that we've created. In your case, I would advise that you call it Project 2. Within that project folder, you have an assets folder, and that assets folder is going to hold the insect image that you've found. And then you're going to crop that insect image to an 11:17 aspect ratio using Photoshop. When you get there, you need to open up Illustrator, and on the left-hand side, there's a big blue button called New File. Click New File, come over here to Print, and they have all these default sort of sizes that you can take a look at. But one thing I might advise that you do is just go over to the far right, and you can customize your increments and all the details that you need to adjust for a particular project. So we are working in inches. Notice how it went from pixels to inches over here on the left-hand side as far as width and height. We want the width to be 17, and we want the height to be 11. Okay. Everything else looks good to me. We want to keep it CMYK, not RGB, because RGB is for a computer screen, or it's a different color system, red, green, blue. But since we might possibly be printing these on an Epson printer, I think it's better to use CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and key. K or key stands for black. Okay. We also want the quality to be high, not low. Remember, 72 PPI or DPI is for a computer screen or a device, while 300 PPI or DPI is print quality. So if you're going to take this to an Epson printer, or if you want to print this for a gallery, for example, or a client, it needs to be 300 PPI or higher. Okay, now hit Create. Boom. Okay, so now we've got this nice, beautiful, clean artboard that we can work with. You can hit Command, you can minimize and zoom in and out. So Command minus, and then Command plus. And by the way, full disclosure, I'm on a Mac. Oh, the other thing that you just saw me do is when I minimized or zoomed in, if I want to see the entire image again, like if I want to see everything on my screen, I simply hit Command 0, and that will bring everything into vision. Okay, that's very, very useful. On the right-hand side, I would also suggest that you come over here to your workspace, and you have all these different options. But the real truth is I'm always using Essentials Classic. And if things don't look the way that you want them to look, you can always come down here and say Reset Essentials Classic. Okay? All right. And that'll kind of bring you back to square one. I think that's nice. So now we want to come up here. We want to place the image on the artboard on a particular layer. And so your layers palette is on the left-hand side. If you kind of put your cursor over this icon with two sort of planes overlapping each other, that'll bring up the layers palette. And by default, you will have one layer. But we're going to want to create more layers for this project. If you don't see that, you can come up here to Window. And then here, because it has a check mark against next to it, you can see that it is currently engaged. So we don't need to turn it off or on. But this is another way to find all of your palettes. So sometimes it gets a little confusing on the right-hand side over here, but you can always find things and everything's more or less that you need here. Okay, so I also want to rename this layer Beetle. So all I did was I double-clicked in, B-E-E-T-L-E, enter. So now I've renamed that layer where we are going to put that Photoshop image. Now let's place that Photoshop image. File, place. A dialog box is going to pop up. Now you're going to navigate to the beetle, okay? And we know exactly where that beetle is because we had the foresight to think about creating a project folder. And within that project folder is an assets folder. And within that assets folder is the beetle image. It's good project management, okay? So mine can be found by clicking on Teaching, Archive, Courses, Digital Media 1. There is the insect project, okay? And it's in my assets folder, and there it is, assets, beetle. Now I'm getting the okay to say place, okay? Hit place. Now you're going to see the icon at first, and essentially what Illustrator is asking, where do you want to place this image? And so you can really place it anywhere because you can make changes after the fact. So click to place. Now you can use your black arrow selection tool, okay? And if you hover over that, it should give you a hint. I hope it does that today, or maybe I disengaged it. But that's the black arrow selection tool. So notice how when I put my cursor over this image, I can drag it around and move it around. I also have smart guides engaged. So if I come up here to view smart guides, you'll see that there's a little checkbox here. That's a good thing for this project because you're going to want to put this image up in the top left-hand corner. And notice how those little blue magenta lines, the smart guide system is saying, yep, you've interlocked, and it'll also kind of snap into that corner, but you have officially interlocked into that corner. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is with my left hand, or my left pinky, to be more specific, I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to change the size of this beetle because I need it to be a little bit larger. Now, see, if I don't hold Shift, I'll distort the image. That's not good, okay? Now I'm going to hit Command Z and undo. Command Z is the go-to undo function. Now I'm going to hold Shift this time and see how I can expand this image all at the same time. Nice. Okay. And it'll snap into this corner down here, guys. Okay. When that is complete, I want you to come over here to your layers palette, and you'll see there's an eyeball that you can turn on and off. And right next door, there's an empty space, but you can actually engage a lock. If you click lock, you'll see that little lock icon. And if you come over here, you're not going to be able to move your image. Furthermore, your cursor is no longer the black cursor. Now, your cursor is turned into like this pencil with a no-go indicator, or essentially telling you you can't do anything because your layer is locked. You have that particular layer engaged and it is locked down. You cannot add any content or take away any content or move any content. It is currently locked down. Okay, that's good. But we need a layer so that we can actually work, of course. And so my suggestion is to, of course, go over to your layers palette, and then there's this little plus sign. Click plus. And you can create a variety of layers. I think for this particular project, you're supposed to create a minimum of 12 layers. So maybe like the back of the beetle's back can be one layer, you know, like this particular leg, or I don't know, is this a horn? Some kind of a horn that the beetle would use to I guess attack prey or something. Maybe that could be a layer. So you can start being organized. Not only are we organized with our file setup, but we're also organized with the way that we're just creating layers, you know. And sometimes you want to turn layers on and off, and you come across those circumstances quite often in these projects, which may surprise you, but sometimes you just need to focus on a particular area for a while. And so you want to turn off some aspect of the bug on and off, or the layers. The other nice thing is that after you do start to get some work done, you can toggle the beetle on and off. And so at some point, you're going to have a whole lot of content that is overlaid on this beetle, okay? And it's kind of nice just to see the progress. So you can, again, turn that layer on and off, but do not unlock it. I don't think there's really any reason to unlock that layer for the remainder of this project, okay? All right, so let's kind of get started. I mean, it's really easy peasy. And at this point, you should be familiar with some of the basic tools. You should understand um, the selection tool. Of course, now it's showing you the shortcut. These shortcut keys are really handy also, you know, knowing V and A and P for pen, for example, or T for type. I mean, just all of those keyboard shortcuts can be really handy when you're starting to do this project. Because it's not just about knowing the software, but it's also about working smartly or efficiently with the software. And so I guess the technical term for that is there are ergonomics associated with being a graphic designer, you know, having a really good workstation, having a nice monitor that you can see, having a monitor situated at the right level so it's eye height. It's like, you know, equal with your eyes so that you're not looking down or looking up too much. Those are all things associated with a good workstation. And also going back and forth with your mouse many times is just maybe not the best or efficient use of your time. And so familiarize yourself with those short keys because you know, these habits that you're going to be developing right now with the software, if you plan on being a graphic designer for the rest of your life or, you know, as a profession, then you need to build those habits right now so that you don't have to break those habits later. Trust me. So again, you know, we can zoom in with Command plus, and that's really handy because look at all the beautiful details happening with this beetle. Okay, there are highlights, there are a variety of colors and reflections happening on this beetle. I mean, there are very subtle eyes, there are hairs, and this one actually I think could be better quality. I mean, this is not the best quality image. Um, I don't know why, I don't know what happened, but when we transposed things in Photoshop, I feel like we lost a little bit of quality, or maybe the initial image wasn't that great. I'm not going to switch gears at this point, but just kind of keep that in mind. The more, when you're zooming in, you want to be able to see these details really clearly, okay? I'm going to be moving through this project with probably, at a faster rate, but I also want to mention that this is the kind of project that can actually take you a while. It's, you know, there's a lot of potential here, okay? So plan on investing, frankly, like hours, if not days, into this project, okay? And working late into the night and having some fun. So I'm gonna start with this kind of front left leg. Maybe I'll call it that. Leg, front, left. Notice how when I'm naming layers, it's all lowercase, okay? And also the words are separated by these dashes. Well, that probably comes from my web design experience, but generally, when you name files appropriately, you can find them later. Like, you know, sometimes you'll be looking for a project that you did 6 months or 6 years ago. So you come up here to your search and you type in beetle or Japanese beetle, and you're hoping that it comes up so that you can find that Illustrator file. Because although you are really good with file management and project management, I mean, your creative folder is going to grow quite a bit over the years. So anyway, I think that's kind of where that comes from a little bit, but also when you start combining words and doing weird things with syntax and web design, it's just bad practice, okay? And so that's another one of those good practice things that I wanna really sort of instill in each of you. Lowercase and all words are separated by a dash, and you just intuitively name things, you know, what you might even search for later. Okay. So, but this to me feels like it's a leg, it's in the front, it's left. Makes sense to me. Okay. So let's kind of start with this process. So I need these very specific colors, right? Okay. And so I'm gonna hit my eyedropper tool. And by the way, what I did was I just came over here and I hit I for eyedropper. Otherwise, I got to come all the way over here and engage the button. But why do that when I can just hit I for eyedropper? Now I'm going to select this beautiful color. Okay, and it's really almost sort of like a dark midnight violet that's coming off this bug. It's really amazing. And then there's this very kind of particular area that has that color. And I'm going to use the curvature. I'm not going to use the pen tool. I'm going to use the curvature tool. Okay. And I'm just going to sort of map out that space. And you guys, when in doubt, just begin. Okay. And note the curvature tool is really nice because, um, you know, it rounds everything out. It may not be exactly what you want for this project. And just out of curiosity, I can already start just kind of taking away that back image, okay, that is locked. I can make it go away and come back. I can do the same thing with this layer here, but just again, a reminder that you have a lot of power, you know, in the driver's seat with this stuff. You can create a lot of layers, guys, okay? You can also open up a layer and you can create paths like this. And so instead of having them all together, you know, I mean, you can almost sort of consolidate them, like, and then you can move around the layers. I think that's a little confusing because in this circumstance, you can't really name those. I generally don't go in here and name the path. And so it's just as well for me to, like, for example, go back into this layer and say leg front left 1. Okay. You can expand this palette too so that you can see things a little bit more clearly. That's kind of nice. Okay. You can make it go away and then come back. So, I mean, it's just kind of showing you some basics with an Illustrator or reminding you because you're probably already there. So I need to continue sort of building this leg, but I'm actually going to do it on another layer and I want it to be a little bit below. In fact, I'm just going to lock that down. Then I'm going to copy. Like what I did was I just double clicked in here. I copied that title and now I'm going to create another layer, except I'm going to call it leg front left 2. Okay. And I'm going to drag that layer beneath because I want that layer to be beneath, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this kind of area right there. So I'm going to select this other purple. So I've loaded it up here. Now I'm going to hit curvature tool. And I'm just going to start mapping it out. And by the way, watch how I'm overlapping or going underneath the previous shape. So if I unlock both of these, those are 2 separate layers. That's the shape I just made. That's the shape that I made previously. And you can see that this one is underneath that one. And I did that purposefully, okay? Because I don't want to spend too much time trying to interlock these layers. And I want my insect illustration to almost appear more organic and kind of natural, okay? And so look at, I mean, these things, all these little tiny shapes are going to add up into something really, really wonderful at some point, okay? And it is tedious. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, this can take a long time. But the good thing is that, graphic designers are oftentimes paid by the hour. And it's fun. Okay, just another kind of shape that I'm trying to work with here. Now, looks like I might have to move. So right now, look what happened. This is, oops, and actually this needs to be adjusted a little bit. Watch, I can use the white arrow tool, come over here, select the object, there's the anchor, double click into it and just drag it up a little bit and just make that correction. But still, it's not in the right location. I want it to be below because I'm kind of building up. This is strange. I don't know what happened here. That's a funny little moment. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I'll just leave it, let it be. Okay? Because again, I'm just trying to work more fluidly with this for change. I almost kind of feel like there's a swath of information that can sort of wrap this direction. So I'm going to do another one of these with that purple. I need to create another layer. And this is, yeah, I mean, you could end up with a lot of layers, guys. There are other ways to do this, and I'll show you as far as like, but layers don't cost you anything, so why not use them? And you can give them an ID or a label. So it just makes a lot of sense to me to exploit them or use them. And I'm going to go up behind because it doesn't cost us anything, right? Lock that layer and move that below. Okay. So now we can, if we make the beetle image go away briefly, we can see we're already starting to kind of build out this beautiful leg. You can get really detailed with this. It can take a while. And I hope you'll take the time. So I've been using the curvature tool quite a bit. You can also use the blob brush. So there's the paintbrush, and then if you hold it down, it'll show you the blob brush tool, which I think is really nice. Just as a reminder, if you let's create a new layer to experiment with. If you use the paintbrush tool, it creates a stroke, essentially. Okay. And so with white arrow tool, you can adjust that stroke. But if you use the blob brush tool and do something more like this, if you click on that, that's actually a fill. So notice how these are changing. Fill to stroke. So that's a stroke. If I select this one, now it's a fill. So I think that's really kind of just a nice thing. Um, it just kind of depends on your process and what you're doing, okay? So let's see, I'm gonna just continue with this. Now I'm gonna use the regular pen tool. Oops, but I didn't choose the right color. Grab that proper purple. Grab the pen tool. Notice how I didn't use the shortcut. I'm breaking my own rules, right? And compared to the curvature pen tool, you don't get the smoothness, okay? So just sort of keep that in mind. This is a problem. Like, for example, like right now, I can't see what's behind, so I kind of have to guesstimate. Yeah. I'm just going to keep working on this claw. I'll leave it up to you guys how OCD you want to get about these details. I mean, I think it's more important to have variability in color, and I think it's okay. And these insects, it's really interesting too. Look at it, kind of naturally segments out. In fact, if I'm hitting Command Z, if I really wanted to be smart, I would say maybe I should just kind of wrap up the claw because I got to close the loop. Close the loop there. Okay. I hit Command 0. So you can see this is definitely a little bit more smooth, and this is a little bit more choppy, and this was with the curvature pen tool, and this was with the regular pen tool. But there's definitely variability within the color. You know, when these things, the goal is not to create an illustration that looks exactly like the photo, in my opinion. The goal is more um, to sort of create a version of your insect. So please keep that in mind. I'm going to bring the beetle back. I'm going to hit Z for zoom so I can scroll in, take a look. Yeah, let's call this, we got to name that layer, right? Otherwise I'll forget. I'm going to call it leg front left claw. And then there are these interesting segments that I'm going to attack next. I think that's really interesting. So let's, I wonder, you know, let's use the blob brush tool just for a change. But I made a mistake. I did not, I mean, there's different color happening here, right? And I also believe that I can make the brush bigger or smaller. And you do that, um, if you select the blob brush tool and then you use brackets left to make it small, it's already small, so I'll go big first. You can use the right bracket. You guys can see that. You can use those brackets to make your blob brush bigger or smaller, okay? And so that can be handy when you're doing something like this. But the real truth is, I kind of think I want the blob brush for this kind of darker area. So I'm gonna just kind of do this real quick. Look how quickly I can start just kind of mapping out. I'm selecting the color and then just using the blob brush tool. And it's okay if it just kind of feels organic, right? There's this real nice kind of highlight here that I don't want to get lost. Lighter. I mean, you could go in and just all day long. What's the other thing to kind of keep in mind is that when you're doing this, whatever you build next will be on top, if that makes sense. So for example, here next door, if I select, because it was a little lighter here, if I eyedropper that color and hit the blob brush, notice how it's on top now. So you can really just kind of, I believe, move pretty quickly just using the blob brush tool. And then, you know, I was talking about how things are segmented out. So maybe the next thing I want to do is I want to grab the curvature tool. And I want to, well, first I want to eyedropper the right color. I'm going to grab the curvature tool. when you have a sharp corner that you're trying to pass around, you need to just click a few more anchor points closer together, okay? But you'll get the hang of it. This is a very intuitive program. And then you always want to close the loop. Now, we just covered up the hard work that we've done, but what we could do is we could select it, right click. That's why I think right click is so important. Secondary click, right click, arrange, send to back. Now let's just kind of look at the work that we've been doing. I think it's kind of nice. You guys, I know this is very time consuming and it really does take quite a bit of work. Okay. So let's see, let's hit Z for zoom. Cruise back in and look more at these details. I think that's interesting. It's almost sort of like this strange highlight there. I think that can be accomplished with the blob tool. So I selected the color. I don't want it on top. Arrange, send to back. You can also bring things forward, of course. So remember, this is almost kind of like painting, okay? You know, you get really up close and you see these shapes, and then you step back, and all of these shapes tend to make sense to the visual eye and experience. So trust your intuition and trust the details and the process. Let's see, I'm going to use the curvature tool for this one. That's one of those real nice kind of segments of the claw. I mean, it's just actually quite amazing the way insects are built, you know, the engineering or the art, I guess biological engineering or architecture. To me, I think it's really fascinating. There's a claw. We don't want it hanging out on top, so arrange, send to back. Look at this, it's just building out. Beautiful. But the key is really using that eyedropper tool and paying attention to what's behind and scanning the area with your eye. Okay. Just another one of these beautiful highlights right here. I'm going to capture that with the eyedropper tool. Blob brush. That's something I can just make real fast. Nice. Arrange, send it back. Okay. Now there's this interesting kind of claw. Okay, let's continue building. Oop, I need to select the right color. Right. Curvature tool. Some things you're not going to be able to always get completely. So in other words, just I'll say it again, you know, the goal is not to recreate this insect as if it were a photograph. The goal is to create this new kind of unique experience of the insect through using digital media. I mean, you can waste a lot of time, unfortunately, double checking your work, but look at the claws coming together. Everything is coming together. Hmm. This is nice. I mean, there are a lot of intricate details here, so I think the blob brush is going to be handy. I need a color. Okay. Okay. I need highlight. Send that back. if you can get really, look at all this, you could just get really lost in all of these details. Um, I'll leave that up to you. I mean, if this is for a portfolio and you're serious about getting a job when, this is maybe an opportunity to show a potential employer how focused you are. Blob brush tool right there is a little bit too big, so I can reduce. I accidentally selected the eraser, which is right below. Again, you can really just build, and then it's just kind of fun. We need some information down here. There's another highlight here that I want to grab that's a slightly different color. And I'm going to send it back. There's a big swath of this sort of lighter violet happening up here. And so I could really get lost in a lot of this color, guys, because there's so much variability in this beetle. But I am trying to be a little more selective, mostly for time management. Definitely need this beautiful highlight. It's almost sort of a gray. Let's take a look. It's happening, guys. That's a claw for sure. Now, I mean, before I move forward, you guys, there's something very important actually that I have not done. I have not saved this document, which is a mistake on my part. So if I hit Command S, this dialog box will come up, and I'm going to rename this file Beetle dash Japanese, and I'm going to put it in my project folder. Okay, so now it's saved. And I would suggest saving every 10, 15 minutes. And even after every 2 or 3 hours, what you could do if you're really focused on being just a safe designer, because sometimes files do get corrupted, you can save as occasionally. And maybe you could say Beetle Japanese 1, Beetle Japanese 1.1, Beetle Japanese 1.2, and etc. And then every day you're just kind of creating these iterations of this file so that just in case something happens, you have a file to fall back on. Again, this is digital. It's not costing you much, okay? And even these file sizes, an Illustrator file is relatively small. Okay. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a little bit of fun. We need to build out the remainder of this leg right here. So I'm going to do that. And sometimes it's kind of handy to do that kind of thing up close. But yeah, I think this is all more or less the same color. And it'll be a safe bet for me to use the blob tool. Curvature. I'm going to zoom in. Look at that. And I'm using an Apple Magic Mouse too, and that's how I'm able to click and sort of move around with my index finger simultaneously. If you don't have a Magic Mouse and you plan on being a graphic designer, you need to purchase one of those as quickly as possible. because they're time savers, okay? So we got that taken care of. I also need to, I feel like I'm gonna use two different colors here. I'm gonna grab that lighter violet on the left, blob tool, and then I'm gonna hit V, select it, and I'm gonna send to back. I'm gonna do the same thing here with this darker violet. So, I mean, the more detailed I get with these actions, when I scroll back, the more beautiful the beetle is going to be. I mean, you guys, this is essentially, it's a really good lesson for just painting too. You know, you're stepping back, you're stepping forward, you're stepping back, you're stepping forward. All right. And you're paying attention to shadow and light. In this case, these beautiful varied violets that are that are more shadowed. And then there are these incredible highlights happening as well. So, but that is a really interesting, like, I guess it's a beetle knuckle, right? But this highlight to me is very, very important. So I'm going to attack that with the blob brush. This is fun. And I got to build out, there's like this really interesting layer. I almost feel safe kind of just mm, right here, it gets a little darker. So sometimes you have to make the photo go away. So I actually think there's two colors here that should be given some attention. So this dark color, and then I'm going to use the curvature tool. I can probably accomplish quite a bit by just, yeah. And remember, I'm going underneath that layer, so I can kind of move relatively quickly. They're almost identical, but see, those sorts of details will really make this project strong. Almost identical, but they're not. But this is a very specific violet. Boom. Curvature tool, I think, is best in this circumstance. And I'm defining that edge at this point, or the edge of the leg. And I'm actually going to come up here, look at that. It's going to start kind of changing color on us a little bit. But layers, again, are really powerful in this program to move you quickly along as well. I think that's what I want to do. And then there's another unique, you guys, I'm just kind of, as you start doing this, you start paying attention to the opportunities to articulate. Wow. And yet, this isn't very difficult, right? This is pretty darn easy. Um, hmm, I'm not sure what happened here. That's interesting, huh? I have to go back and make a repair. So select white arrow tool. Oops. Double click into that anchor point and just maybe adjust the handle. Yeah. So yeah, you got to make corrections occasionally too. I mean, we just accomplished a lot of that leg business. Now let's take a look. I'm not really sure exactly what's happened, but you know, it's like, you know, what I say in drawing, draw what you see, draw what you see. It's a sort of shorter curvature moment. eyedropper tool. Hmm. Use the blob brush here. Articulating these connected joints. This is a lot of fun. There's that beautiful moment right here. I mean, we could do this all day, guys. In fact, maybe I hope you will. And don't be afraid of that either, guys. Work is your friend. Um, hard work is your friend. And invest yourself into this. There's nothing wrong with putting 6, 8 hours a day into a project. But yeah, this is an important area, I think. There's so much variability with color and oops. So I really like that blob brush tool. I think it's perfect for this project. The pen tools are fantastic as well, but don't forget about the blob brush. And just the eyedropper, you're just constantly going in and selecting color and filling things in. If I weren't recording and talking to you guys, I would most definitely be listening to podcasts um, to sort of pass the time or occupy the time because although I do love these tools, I think there's something to be said for multitasking when you're doing this kind of work. Um, so you can educate yourself and even listen to artist interviews, which is why I provide those things for you for everyone typically in art and design projects, because I think it's one of the best ways to learn about art really is to listen to other artists and designers talk about it. Wow, look at that. I mean, you guys, and so you can see like in this knuckle, the work that I was really giving this area to articulate is really starting to pay off. Beautiful. Okay, there's a big kind of area here that seems pretty consistent as far as the color. But then it's interesting because there's like this little highlight right here. I think that's important. So I'm gonna finish off this little area with the blob brush tool. Send that to back. And now I'm going to see if I can select this color. By the way, I should start using the shortcut for the blob brush. It's B with shift, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Never mind. Shift plus B. I guess it has to be in that order. Yeah. Okay, because we're going to arrange, send to back. Okay. So, okay. Let's select the color. It's pretty consistent. And If you articulate those corners with the curvature tool, it works out a little bit better. So in other words, more anchor points. I'm intuitively just going through and clicking and grabbing and defining this area. And now I'm going to send it to back because I don't want it to cover up any of this hard work over here. So yeah, it's starting to get there. At some point I'll have to go in here. In fact, let's do that now. Why not? Look at these beautiful, I don't want folks to forget about these hairs. And so in this circumstance, maybe it's just, it could even be really subtle. And I'm going to use the pen, the curvature tool. Escape. Now, that was defining that object as a fill, but we actually want it to be a stroke, like so. Escape. Drag. I can also hold Shift to select multiple objects. Right click, arrange, send to back. I mean, just those little things can be really helpful too. Okay, save. Stretch back a little bit. Take a swig of coffee. Okay, let's keep going. And I know that this is time consuming, but I hope you all are having fun. I mean, some of this gets a little complicated, to really understand what is what, because, I don't know the anatomy of a beetle, but I think there's like this me. I want to define that line. And then I want to create these little moments. Using the blob brush tool. Needs to be a little smaller. And kind of surgically, I mean, I could go in and just use one color, but look at what happens when I just take a little extra time, and it can really make a world of difference. There's a nice silhouette of beautiful violet happening here. I'm going to use the curvature tool. Send it back. Now, I believe I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive by just kind of deciding on that color. Blob brush tool a little bit bigger. The truth is this kind of extends down here too. Okay, but now select it, send it back. Let's see how it looks. Interesting. Save. Hmm, processing. I'm gonna start moving a little faster just for the sake of time. So it doesn't mean that your process has to go this fast. But you know, this sort of video could easily um, go on for all day. So hmm. I always talk about art as sort of visual problem solving and just, and scanning as sort of problem solving as well. Sometimes you got to make things go away because you might have to go back and make some corrections. For example, I think this can edit anchor points. You can come in here and, oh, maybe this is the one you want to edit, but oops, somehow I ended up with a lot of anchor points there. That works. Making a few little minor corrections. And again, notice how I cannot move this beetle image. I mean, you can imagine doing all this real hard work and you've been focusing and trying to get this done, and then you accidentally move the beetle. We got to finish this knuckle or whatever this is right here real quick. So this is one of those examples where you accidentally cover up some information that you need. So I've got to select that, put it back, and then kind of guesstimate. Hmm. In this circumstance, I want to bring it to front. Actually, can't even notice the difference. I think this is supposed to be that. There we go. Yeah. Hmm. Let's define this little claw real quick. And let's use the curvature tool. First, we got to get the color. Hmm. That was just me intuitively thinking, okay, let's define this. This claw, though, is important to me, being distinguished. And I'm going to use a sharper pen tool for that one. So folks, I could do this all day long, but I think this is enough training and tutorial. You basically just need to repeat what I've been doing with a whole lot more time moving forward, okay? So thank you. And I'll see you on the other side to review your work.